Welcome back to Highly Respected. I'm your host, Scott Greer, and today we're going to have another fantastic and incredible episode for you guys. So sit back and enjoy. And today we're obviously going to be talking about the House, Mike Johnson, and the latest terrible bill package that they passed over the weekend. So there's a lot to discuss here. Over the weekend, they passed a $95 billion funding package that included funding for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, as well as a TikTok ban. I think most right-wingers would have been appalled at all of these things and how it passed. And it included no border security whatsoever. It just included these things. And actually, the TikTok ban was included as a sop to Republicans to get more of them to vote for the entire package. So we'll discuss this, and this also goes along with takes I made last week about the growing demand to have a motion to vacate the speaker's chair and have a new speaker to replace Mike Johnson, and what that means and what this is all about. So how did this bill pass? How did Mike Johnson betray his promises that he would not allow any spending bill through that did not include border security? Well, this all happened at the beginning of the year. The Senate made a deal on immigration. That deal was absolutely terrible. That bill, as I've talked about, is worse than the status quo because it doesn't even solve the border security issue. It still allows 5,000 migrants to come in every day. But if it exceeds that number, if the daily average exceeds 5,000 border encounters every day, then they implement tough security measures, which may not even work. But then only then do they implement those. There's nothing about interior enforcement, about increased deportations and unleashing ICE on all these migrants that we have in this country. There's only this stipulation that they're going to shut down the border, which granting a lot of exceptions to this measure is like, oh, if you're fleeing violence, you'll be let in. So it's not even really a tough shutdown. There's so many exceptions that it almost negates any influence it would have. And it allows it. And if you have around 5,000 migrants per day, you're about to get 150,000 per month, which is far higher than the average under Trump. Under Trump, it only had like 1 or 2 months that exceeded 100,000. I think the highest month was 130,000 or so. And that number is considered an achievement under Biden. If they get under 150,000, they are cheerleading, they're celebrating, they're like, woo, we solved this problem. But there was only 2 months or so where they had more than 100,000 encounters. Most months under Trump, it was under 50,000. Now, with that immigration bill that they pushed, 150,000 is supposed to be the status quo. It's supposed to be what's normal and expected, and we just settle for the new norm. And then also increases legal immigration because it creates 50,000 new green cards. It legalizes Afghan parolees. It gets the children and family members of H-1B visa holders, and I think a few others, legal status. So it increases legal immigration. And then worst of all, it's effectively an amnesty because what happens is that they have a huge backlog of asylum cases because every illegal immigrant comes here is like, oh, I'm seeking asylum because it's poor where I'm living. And then they're like, oh, come on in. We'll give you a court date. And the court date is like 5 years ahead. You know, they have court dates that are in the next decade. There's people who have gotten court dates in the 2030s there. So there's a massive backlog because, I mean, we have like 10 million of these so-called asylum seekers or so. We have millions of them in our country. And government already works slow, so their case isn't heard. Their solution, instead of having judges, immigration judges hear this, who are more likely to come down and say, no, you're not getting asylum. You living in a shack in Guatemala is not sufficient reason for you to get asylum. You're going back home. They want to give it to asylum officers who would be hired by liberal bureaucrats and would be liberals themselves. So they'd have all these bleeding heart liberals. They're like, oh, they can't make as many food as they want. We're gonna have to let them in. Oh, they came here to make better TikTok videos. Oh, that's a sufficient reason to get asylum. So they're all gonna get them. So pretty much all those illegals that come here would get asylum, and they'd get permanent legal status. It'd be impossible, near impossible to ever to ever deport them unless you strip them of asylum, which would be a tough measure for President Trump or any future president. So they'd be here for good. I mean, and it's already all these measures are keeping migrants here for good. It's like every migrant who gets temporary protected status, which they're bringing in a lot of illegals under this program, it turns into permanent protected status because they keep extending it for every group. They never deport. It's all automatically hard enough to deport. And when you give them any type of legal status, it makes it even more difficult. So you don't want to have them any legal status. If they don't have legal status, you can deport them. It's much easier to deport them, and it's much easier to get them out of the country. So you don't want that. And that Senate bill that they made, spent months negotiating, was what came out of it. And this is what we're going to attack along with the Ukraine bill. So Republicans had a choice. They could either say, well, we want to do something on border security, so we'll accept that. Or they could say, you know what, it's better actually just to wait till Trump wins the election and he can solve this matter rather than allowing this horrible bill to go through Congress. And that's the decision Mike Johnson made. And people were rightfully praising Johnson for saying, this bill has zero chance in the House. It's dead on arrival. We are not going to hear this bill. And that killed it. Senate didn't even really consider it. They released it. And then a bunch of Republicans were like, we're not voting for this. And then Johnson made it clear that this is never going to make it through the House. And that was in. That was a good move. And at that time, it was pretty much expected that they were going to give all this foreign aid funding without border security because this is the only thing that could pass the Senate. They have H.R. 2, which the House passed last year, which is a pretty good border security bill. There's no amnesty provisions. It's tough enforcement. It's got serious asylum reforms that's not going to allow every person who's coming across the border to claim asylum. There's a lot, brings back Remain in Mexico that forced migrants to stay out of the country when they were when they were waiting for their asylum case to be heard. A lot of other good things. This is a serious immigration bill. But the Senate's never going to take it up. And they can't even get they can't even get every Republican to support, tacking on H.R. 2 to any in the House. This is the House, not the Senate. They can't get every Republican on board to attach that to any foreign aid funding. So really, they're shit out of luck because you have to remember, is Republicans have hardly any leverage. They have a 1-vote majority in the Senate, in the House. They don't have the majority in the Senate. They also don't control the White House. And they don't have a veto-proof majority to go over Biden's veto. They can't even get their old caucus together in the House. The House is a complete insane asylum among Republicans. They can't agree on anything. They're always at loggerheads. They both moderates and conservatives absolutely hate each other, and there's a lot of bad blood. They can't get anything agreed to, and there's no leverage on these moderates to go along with this stuff either. As a lot of them are in Biden voting districts or districts that went for Biden. They're, more worried about a Democrat challenger in November. They don't have to worry about a conservative challenger. In primary, a lot of primary season is over, so there's no way to threaten them. And they have to deal with those circumstances. So that they couldn't get this stuff through the House. And when that Senate deal was killed, it was pretty much effectively agreed that we're just not going to have any type of, we're just going to have some funding for Ukraine or wherever, and then just let Trump solve this, which was what Mike Johnson was saying, which not the ideal situation, but it's pretty pragmatic because solving border issue or whatever thing could be agreed to by the Senate and get Biden's signature would likely be terrible, and it would take away this potent issue from Trump in the election. And the most important political objective, and I'm going to be stressing this throughout this rant, is for Trump to get elected in November. That is the most important consideration. Everything else at this point doesn't matter as much as getting Trump elected, because this can solve, if anything, we want to do anything on Ukraine, on the border, on anything else, we have to get a new president. And the only way we can do that is by getting Trump elected. So anything that distracts from that is something that we shouldn't pursue. We need to solely focus on getting Trump elected. And that's the only way we're going to solve border and immigration. And giving Biden a win on this, which is not even a real win. It's just ensuring that the border isn't in the headlines, isn't on the front page of newspapers, which is what that Senate deal was all about. It was about not solving the issue, continuing to allow in the invasion, but not having 200K plus a month come across and just keeping it out of the headlines while still having an insane amount of immigrants come to this country. That was like perfect for Democrats. It was a win-win situation. And they killed it and they moved on. So now we're at the line of what Republicans should do. And a lot of Republicans voted for this because it was the border. And even a number of Republicans voted against Israel funding, which I was surprised. There was 21 Republicans who voted against it, which is a surprisingly large number. And the majority of them was because they voted because of the broken promise, that they felt that there should be no foreign aid unless it's tied in with border security. Well, as I explained, they weren't going to get border security because that was the only thing that could pass Congress. Now, you could say they could shut down the government over this. Well, there's some issues with that. First off, Democrats just going to be like, okay, we'll take this fight. They can't get their entire caucus together. Senate Republicans are opposed to it as well. They're not going to cave to the House Freedom Caucus over this matter. What they would figure out a way to bypass the Freedom Caucus and just have a straight vote where they give the necessary votes, and that's that. And also, Johnson eventually has one reason that he's betraying conservatives is that he realizes these people are going to vote him out no matter what. They're going to motion to vacate him. It could be over anything. Marjorie Taylor Greene issued her motion to vacate over just a temporary spending bill that he had to pass because, once again, they only have a tiny majority. He can't get the caucus together, so he just has to pass these temporary stuff. They have no negotiating ability. You can only have negotiating ability if you have your caucus completely unified behind you. Johnson, compared to McCarthy, has even less leadership skill or less ability to control his caucus. And he's pretty much like an ineffective leader. He's a weakling. This was apparent when he was selected. And there were some people like me who are saying that this guy is an idiot. You're gonna get the exact same results that you had with McCarthy. The only difference is this guy's gonna be more inept at controlling the caucus, and he's gonna be a worse fundraiser. And so both things came true, despite all of conservative media celebrating this guy as the base speaker because he trolled some of the Democrats. Like there was like something where he had a newspaper with like Trump impeached, and he's like winking in front of I think it was like Speaker Pelosi's office, or she was then speaker. And it's like, who gives a shit about this? Like, but people were easily tricked by him, and they're like, this guy is going to be so awesome, and you're going to be proven wrong. Matt Gaetz was brilliant for getting rid of McCarthy, and instead we got the same exact situation. It might even be worse. You could argue that maybe McCarthy could have made a better deal. Who knows? It would have probably been this. Most likely scenario, it's the exact same results. But instead, Republicans are getting less money in fundraising. So Johnson's calculation comes up from MTG, or motion to vacate was over a temporary spending bill. And this likely convinced Johnson that, fuck it. You know what? I'm just going to go full on foreign aid budget because guess what? Democrats are promised to keep me a speaker. I guarantee you he's had donors and other people who want to give money, and they're like, you have to end the House chaos. We cannot have more chaos in the House over this shit. And he's also realizes that, you know, it's pretty much impossible for Republicans to find another successor to him among their own caucus. And there is a likelihood that I argued last week that Hakeem Jeffries could be the next House Speaker if they motion to vacate. I don't think that's likely anymore because Democrats made it clear that if Johnson gets what they want, this foreign aid package, that they would defend him in a motion to vacate, that they wouldn't vote for a motion to vacate, which they did against McCarthy because they all hated McCarthy. And there was some discussion whether Democrats would save McCarthy, and instead they all voted against him, which ensured he got removed. Here, there'd be enough Democrats to save him from a motion to vacate. And their word probably means more than conservatives. I mean, conservatives, with them, there's like they're just there to please their engagement ratings on Twitter. It's like there's no desire. It's just like whatever creates the most entertainment they're going to be for. And so they'll do the motion to vacate. They can't get a better House Speaker. There's already moderates who are pissed off at them. There's a lot of moderates who are threatening to resign if there's a motion to vacate. And that would give Democrats likely a majority. And then they could put in Hakeem Jeffries into the Speaker's chair. So as a way of just like because moderates are just have had enough with the conservatives. Now the moderates do suck. And Johnson sucks. I mean, this is very clear Johnson was going to suck when he was picked, but some people deluded themselves into not believing so. I mean, there's just so many weird things about him. I mean, his statements on Black Lives Matter, his weird relationship with his adopted black son, who's got a massive criminal record. He's just a weird guy. And he's like, you could tell he's a weakling by looking at him. And the reason why he's picked wasn't because he was a strong leader, is because no one had a real problem with him. And he was a conservative, and they picked him because he's agreeable. And that's like that's not the rationale you want for a leader. You want somebody who's going to, actually get things done and get everyone in order. This guy was not it. He's way over his head by being speaker. And that's why he's doing what he is doing. But it's clear. It's eventually he made the decision, you know what, it's better to go across. It's better to appease the majority of his caucus and the Democrats and just pass this stuff, and then I stay House Speaker, and that's what's at. Obviously, not what we want, but it makes sense why he's doing this, because there's nothing that the House Republican caucus can't get anything done. So let's go with the leverage. The leverage that they all have was the government shutdown, which would have hurt probably conservatives and Republicans and Trump more than that. I mean, people would get over it, but it hurts them in something where I think with donations, Republicans are having a huge fundraising problem for the election. Democrats are murdering them when it comes to fundraising. This is especially true with House races. And the big reason that the Republicans are probably going to lose the majority in the House, I mean, they're not very good with majority in first place. So as long as they get the Senate majority and they win the White House, most importantly, they win the White House, it's whatever. But they're probably not going to win the House for various reasons. And one of them is the fundraising gap. And so they're already having a fundraising gap. They know that they're going to, that the caucus does not need another bitter battle over this. And there's a potential that they get Democrat Hakeem Jeffries in there. And as argued in the article last week, if they get Hakeem Jeffries in there, that greatly increases the chances of the border bill passing. And the border bill passing is one of the core political objectives that we should make sure doesn't happen this year. Like, we have to ensure that none of these idiotic immigration compromises that they may come up with passes. Because anything of that sort that passes, that is extremely bad for the country. You don't want like this backdoor amnesty to pass. And the only way to ensure that the backdoor amnesty doesn't pass is to keep a Republican House Speaker there. So, and I guess it's stuck with Johnson, who sucks. So let's say Republicans have the shutdown and they're like, we're standing up for the American people. People don't give a shit about Ukraine anymore. Like in a way that it's good and bad. Like good and like, they're not as emotionally committed to it. If we said we're cutting off funding for them tomorrow, it's not like majority of American people are going to be greatly upset. But at the same time, people don't care in the same way that they're strongly motivated by this. And Republicans, and even when they assess the American people, their opinions about the Ukraine war, they still side with the Ukrainians. There's a lot of, especially among Republicans, there's a concern that we're spending way too much money on the Ukrainians, which we are. I mean, with it is obscene to spend $60 billion on it. But the way it was sold was that this is about American jobs, because it's all most of it is going to build weapons and equipment in America to send over to Ukraine. And it's a way of bribing middle America into this. And this is what a lot of these guys are coming out there like, well, my district has thousands of employees making rockets And if we get rid of those rockets, then my constituents are upset. And they were making this pitch to him because the military-industrial complex is very smart. It's made sure that its whole system and factories are spread out all over the country and to various districts, both blue and red, to ensure that everyone keeps voting for the military-industrial complex's budget. Because if you don't, you have a lot of constituents out of work, and if you have a lot of constituents out of work, they're going to vote you out of a job. And that's just how the American democracy works. It's of course not a great state of affairs, but most of these congressmen are committed to ensuring their constituents have jobs and employment. And if the military-industrial complex is the ones employing them, they're going to do their best to try to keep those jobs there. And so a lot of them were using this argument that like, oh, well, this employs a lot of people in my district. It's great for my district's economy. So that's why, and that's what a lot of the money is going for. It's very tawdry that it is that. And obviously when they send all this shit over to Ukraine, the Ukrainians misappropriate it and waste all the stuff we're giving them. But that's that. So it was about like bribing America to keep the war going. And also with the shutdown is that the main thing is to get a negotiated peace there. And pretty much the only one who's going to deliver that is Trump. When he goes there, when he becomes president, even though Trump was supporting this bill, I think it's more that he shouldn't have, but I think the thing is he just wants to get this issue out of the way to focus on him winning the election. Probably a lot of advisors tell him that House chaos and Republicans being seen as like a carnival is not good for his election chances. He has to focus on the issues that matter most that help him, and that's immigration, economy, crime, education, public disorder, all these type of things that help him. And this stuff doesn't really help him get elected. The shutdown, it's not like the American public's going to rise up in favor of Republicans. Very few people are going. First off, Democrats are never going to make the deal that they want. And Republicans, would there be a way that they would get to cave, or their shutdown threat would be overcome, and they would lose that fight no matter what with the shutdown, and people would then blame them for it, and it would just be a loss. It'd be an L. I think I always hear this is that people are like, let's fight no matter what, even if the chances for winning are low. Well, if you lose fights, defeat is not good. And a lot of people are like, we got to keep fighting and defeating. I always saw these people are like, well, if we keep firing the House Speaker, then we look based and we set a strong tone. No, you just don't get shit done. You piss off your whole caucus, and they don't want to do anything with you. Sometimes you should tell donors to fuck off, obviously, about some decisions, but you still need that money for campaigns, and you are left with a shitty situation where you just keep firing House speakers for a variety of reasons, some that are not important, because the initial problem over McCarthy wasn't over fighting over the border. It was about Tea Party shit, about how, they're not cutting the size of the deficit. They're not cutting the debt. They're not cutting spending. And it's like, nobody cares about this stuff anymore. And they don't have the power to cut spending when they have a razor-thin majority, and their majority is just one vote now. They don't have that power to do that. They have no leverage to get these things accomplished when there's a Democratic Senate and a Democratic White House. They don't have these things to accomplish. And that was their whole thing about these Tea Party initiatives, we want separate funding bills. It's like, no one cares about this stuff. And this is initially why they opposed McCarthy. And like half of the people who voted against McCarthy, it was for really stupid reasons. Like Ken Buck was one of the worst Republicans who's now gone, and he voted against him just because, he's not really fully committed to these spending cuts. Nothing about the border. And the House could have done a lot more on the border earlier on. If they had been threatening the budget and made the border and been more unified and clear on this as soon as they came to power, they would have had this. But in the first budget fight in the spring of 2023, it was all Tea Party shit. The border didn't even come up in that fight, over the budget fight. And then they just passed a temporary budget bill once again. Then the fall, the border sort of came up. But it wasn't the main issue. It's still the Tea Party stuff. Once again, they got that passed. And they can't unify the caucus. Then they kicked it to the Senate to ensure. And the Senate actually did surprisingly, showed some surprising backbone. Because it looked like they were going to get full funding for Ukraine and Israel. And even these cucky senators like, no, we want to do we want something on border security. And that looked like they would actually get something done. And then it turned out they had a terrible measure, which it is when you lack leadership, which is a huge problem with Republicans. You have Trump, but he's out of the White House. If he's in the White House, he can lead Republicans and to ensure that they follow a specific line. But when you have no leadership and everyone's going in a different direction and they all hate each other and they don't want to unify with each other, you have this type of idiocy. And so that's what happened with that when they tried to hold, foreign aid funding hostage. They came up with the Senate bill, and that was the only thing the Democrats would agree to, and that's what a lot of moderate Republicans wanted. So moderates are to blame for this. I mean, the whole just like congressional GOP is to blame. Both, the House Freedom Caucus type people that pretty much do every policy on what will get them more retweets, and they can send out a fundraising letter and it looks like they're fighting. That's a problem. And then the moderates who have no balls and have no desire to actually fight for anything that the base cares about, that's also important. But the thing you have to keep is like Ukraine, the base doesn't give a shit about that. I mean, they think we're spending too much money and that's about the only concern with it. It's not as important to them as the border or anything else. And even if they shut down over the border, Democrats and moderate Republicans will like, hey, we have a border bill here for you. Don't you want to vote for that? And then they would get humiliated because it looked like they're standing against the border security, and would elevate once again that this Biden and Democratic line that actually Republicans are against border security because they don't want to vote for our tough bill, which of course the tough bill is not tough at all. So this is like how messy politics is. And this is just an indication that if you want anything solved in the near term, you have to get Trump back in power. That's it. Because House GOP showed very early on last year they were probably not going to do anything. It was just all going to be PR antics and Boebert having some high-profile dates and all those types of matter, and them not being able to agree on anything and come together. If it was a unified caucus that is like every member is lockstep, they could get a lot of things done, but that's just impossible to do. So it's not so much that we're praising, because I mean the $95 billion is just outrageous. This shouldn't be done, but you really need the president, because the president, if you had Trump in there, instead of having a budget deal, he could go force the Ukrainians like, look, money's over, you're getting cut off, make a deal with Putin, it's done. Even the same with like Israel, you could get. I think it's more likely with Trump. Well, it's a little bit unpredictable what Trump would do, but even with the Israel stuff, I think he would be more likely to tell Israel that the war's over, you're going too far, you're trying to escalate this past the original perimeters of what you were setting out to do. It's over. You're not getting the type of funding you want. Only more Trump is going to be able to do this. Well, that's also another thing, is the one way that they got bribed was all these Republicans want money for Israel and Taiwan and the TikTok ban. Also, Trump wouldn't be in favor of the TikTok ban. So it was a massive gift to the national security state that happened with this bill. And it's what happens when you don't have serious leadership guiding Republicans, is that they're all just, it's like trying to herd cats. They all want to go their own way. And if you don't have any type of leadership and unity on this matter, you're led to stupid stuff, and they pass this type of budget, this bill. But I'm not trying to be too black-pilled about it, because the main political objective is getting Trump elected, as I'm going to keep repeating myself. And you don't want any distractions and side quests to that. You just want to get him elected. You want to get him in office. You want him there, and we can finally get some of these problems solved. That money to Ukraine, yeah, it's a waste. But our government wastes a ton of money. And one thing I always find is like the arguments like this could be spent on Baltimore and Detroit. To be honest, it's probably better that it goes to it probably goes better to Ukraine and instead of Baltimore or Detroit. At least it's giving Americans jobs. Like the money we go to Baltimore and Detroit, I mean, it just goes to sports cars and like fur coats for their leadership. And it's like that's just totally, there's like not even enough cost. At least, obviously I don't support how the military industrial complex bribes middle America, but at least it keeps some people employed and, gives middle Americans jobs, which that money to, Baltimore, Detroit, Memphis, whatever, New Orleans, whatever shithole in America we have, that's like money straight down the drain. That's not going anywhere. That doesn't go back even into our economy. So you could argue that some of it goes back into our economy. And I always found that, I always get like, okay, that's not the best argument. In some ways, you're wanting me to give more money to Ukraine. At least they have like Azov having a Viking funeral and stuff, which is way better than what they would do in Detroit with that money. I don't want to sound like I'm pro this, but I'm just having to say that's like our government wastes billions and billions of dollars on lots of stupid stuff already. And it's the more important thing is that, and it also doesn't impact the war. I mean, Russia is still, this is not going to push Russia out of the war. Russia is making slow incremental gains. This war is eventually going to end with Russia gaining a large chunk of Ukrainian territory. How much territory? Probably a lot less than they would have expected or wanted at the beginning, but it's not going to end in victory for Ukraine. And it's still going to get Russia, having the Donbass, and, they're going to be keeping Crimea and a little bit more than that. But that's just what the war is going to be. It's not going to impact the war. It's not going to change the war's factor. But it does give Trump an issue. I mean, even though Trump's like, whatever, sure, Johnson. Politics is about flip-floppery and hypocrisy. Trump could go and say, look, after giving this $60 billion, they're still losing. It's time to make a peace deal. I promise a peace deal with this. We've already tried enough. It's over. I'm getting it coming in there. But he's taken out that issue. And it can illustrate to this people as it's ensured that this is not like a major issue, that this is taken out of the political equation. But once it comes to like the solution to it, Trump can easily point like, look, we've given billions and billions of dollars. I was talking to somebody and saying that we've probably given more money to Ukraine than the Soviet Union during Lend-Lease. I think even on inflation, even accounting for inflation, that we've given more than them, the Soviet Union and Lend-Lease during World War II. I'd have to double check, but I mean, it's an insane amount of money that we've given them, and it's like the American public is just like, well, whatever. We don't care. I mean, this is how our government wastes money. But taking it aside with the budget, most people are going to forget about this and move on, and we can then but the one thing we're not going to move on is Trump and the 2024 election, which is what it matters more than anything. And once Trump gets elected, we can get a better leadership in the House. We can actually, as I said, we can end the Ukraine war. We could probably end Israel conflict. I think Trump would be more willing to do that than Biden, or more capable of doing that than Biden. And most importantly, border security. We can actually get our border under control and start limiting immigration, both legal and illegal. And all this will just be solved with Trump being in power. Sorry getting into stuff. I mean, there's so many things to get blackpilled about. And I try not to get blackpilled about things that I don't have control over. And with Congress, like it is just like showing how idiotic Washington is. It shows how just like pathetic they are and enslaved to the national security state they are. But at the end of the day, there's still hope. And that hope is Trump. And that's why I'm not so blackpilled about it. There's like a lot of other things just to get more blackpilled over. Just the amount of immigrants we have in this country, You know, if you even walk around most cities, and if you're even previously all white suburbs, you'll see a lot more diversity there. And a lot of these things aren't determined by Mike Johnson or whatever Congress is doing. You know, it's just like social transformations we're seeing. And I think there's a desire among conservative media to kind of get people so hyped up and on these matters and just like angry all the time. Sometimes it's good. I think there's warranted for a lot of the conservative media to say, look at what Congress is doing. But there needs to be a clear solution to that, and the clear solution alternative is we got to get Trump in power. The problem is a lot of these guys who are complaining at the high heaven about this are DeSantoids who are then complaining about Trump and lamenting Trump. It's like, look, the only way you're going to solve this is Trump. End of story. And you're not offering any alternative. You're just whining and bitching if you're not offering that or offering any hope. And it's just like a lot of people just want to wallow in this stuff and then they'll say we need a revolution. It's like we're not going to have a revolution over giving billions to Ukraine. It's like the American people just don't give a shit. The thing we might have a revolution over is the TikTok ban, which I'm opposed to the TikTok ban because I don't like giving government more power to censor social media. And the reason why they're going after TikTok is because it's driven by American big tech firms that don't like competition. And they don't like the fact that there's a lot of stuff going viral on there and reaching young people that they don't want, whether it's Andrew Tate or anti-Israel stuff or anything critical of, presenting different foreign policy views. Or there's even a lot of immigration restrictionist stuff and some right-wing content that goes viral on there, more so than any other platform besides Twitter now. And that's why they want to shut down, because it's where young people are, and there's a lot of 16-year-olds who would have otherwise never heard some of this content, and now they're getting it through TikTok, and they want it to limit, and they want to have Google or Microsoft in charge of the new TikTok, and they're going to ensure that nothing politically incorrect, nothing dissident gets into their feed. They're just going to get straight like LGBTQ plus propaganda and stuff, and that stuff's on TikTok, but you also have the chance to get stuff that's dissonant from that, that's very different. And so that's something with the TikTok ban. But I actually do think, if you're really wondering if I do think we may have riots if they ban TikTok, which is showing the hilarious state of the country. I mean, all the teenagers in high schools just riot. You could have that. Out of all things that could cause riots, more than another George Floyd, more than anything else, it'd be a TikTok ban. The only other thing that I would see that you have like mass social turmoil is if we try to ban sports betting. That I would guarantee you may actually have, 1789 France again if we take away sports betting, because it'd be all these young men under 50 being taken their chief hobby away. And they would just be so mad. That would be funny content. But that's like the stuff that would actually rise people up. And so some of these people are like, well, it's like accelerationist to pass this stuff. We need to expose conservatives to how awful our system is. It's like, look, conservatives already, to use some of the new right phrases, know what time it is. They already realize where we are. That's always like what people like to say. It's like, realize where we are. All these conservatives are very aware of this. And they, instead of radicalizing them, which is always the goal, I think it almost has a demoralizing effect. Because these people are already radicalized enough. I mean, the average, like, hardcore conservative media consumer thinks our government is run by satanic pedophiles, or is open to that idea. They think our government is run by evil people. To say, maybe they don't go as far as thinking they're satanic pedophiles, but a lot of people do think that. So these people are radicalized enough to believing that there's something fundamentally wrong with this country. And if you keep kind of feeding them content that like everyone betrays them, everything goes wrong, everything is stacked against you, they, instead of like turning to revolution, because there's no organization for that, there's no leadership for that, there's no real impetus for that at the moment. Instead, they just turn to sports betting. They're like, you know what, I'm done with politics. I'm going to go into just focusing on sports or video games. they just become demoralized. And I think it's sometimes you have to be careful about blackpilling people too much and hyping them all this up with this content, or realize where we are. If they realize where we are, then some people may be like, well, if it's all hopeless, I'm just going to tune out and focus on something else. Something else that puts me happier, or that I can believe I have more control over. And maybe it's focusing on the Chicago Bears or whatever, you know. That's like something that they would be more attuned to. But there are some positives from this. One, a majority of Republicans voted against the Ukraine aid. That is progress. Obviously not enough progress, but that is progress. It's, you know, before, if you had done this bill in 2022, you maybe would have gotten 50 at most. Now you're getting 112. Also, you would have never gotten anyone more than Thomas Massie to vote against Israel aid. Now you got 21 Republicans voting against it. Even though it was primarily because of border security, at least showed that those Republicans prioritize the border more than they prioritize Israel. That's some positive development. It's even the same with Taiwan. You even had a number of Republicans who are voting against the TikTok ban. Not enough. I think it was only like 21 or in the low 20s that voted against the TikTok ban. But you're still seeing some positive developments with foreign policy. I mean, none of this stuff would have happened pre-Trump, obviously. It wouldn't have happened even under Trump's term. And even two or 3 years ago, it wouldn't have happened. And the main reason that they were anti-Ukraine was because of Tucker Carlson. But Tucker Carlson's like off the air, and he's, you know, losing a lot of his influence. Well, losing a lot of his influence among Republicans by not having his Fox News position. But yet, Republicans are still moving in a more America First direction when it comes to foreign policy. Not enough Republicans, obviously, but there's reasons for that. As I said, most of these guys are thinking back home to their home district and how their constituents care about their jobs. And unfortunately not unfortunately, it's just the way America is. I mean, America, like the core of like all its citizens care about is the market. And anything that disrupts market or jobs for some other reason, people are going to get upset about. And that's like it for a lot of other countries. But in other countries, they're willing to make moral sacrifices, sometimes for very stupid reasons. I mean, look at Germany. Germany is killing their economy for really idiotic, morally driven reasons that they have to make sacrifices to have a greener economy or to support Ukraine. And they're literally destroying their economy for these reasons. Americans, you can never convince them to do that. Now, for good and bad. Sometimes there could, like, to make yourself a greener country, a green economy, or, that would be terrible for us. I mean, it would just be a disaster. And all those type of green initiatives in our country are all just ways to give more money to minority communities. I mean, if you looked at the Green New Deal, most of it was about racial wealth redistribution than anything about environment. Now, that's a side issue, but I'm just saying when everything's about the economy, there can be good and bad for that. But part of the bad is that we'll support the national security state and the military-industrial complex because we feel that jobs are connected to it and prosperity is connected to it. So a lot of these Republicans will still vote along with this stuff. And also this is what all their, these intelligence agents and generals will tell them. And a lot of Republicans will, anytime they see stars, they'll just like immediately salute and like, yes, sir, we'll vote for this stuff. And that's what the military comes up to them and says this stuff. So the fact that you have majority of Republicans willing to say no to the generals and to the intelligence community is a positive development. You just need the right leadership and the right focus to get there, to get Republicans on board with this stuff. So I think the main conclusion I want to say is like to not be totally black-pilled about this and to understand where the situation is. I mean, the House GOP is just utterly stupid. They can't get anything done. Moderates and the conservatives are to blame for this. Who you want to blame more, you pick your side. Both share a lot of blame, and they can't unite around anything. And already the decision to get rid of McCarthy was proven to be totally pointless if you got Johnson. Now people want to do the same thing over again to motion vacate, which is not going to work this time because Democrats are going to come to the aid of Johnson. Now, that obviously doesn't make Johnson look good for our eyes, but guess what? It keeps his job. And it'd be such a massive L for those Republicans. Maybe you get 5-10 Republicans vote for the motion to vacate, and he's still speaker. Because it's a massive blow to the leverage and power and influence and stature that the conservatives had. If the entire Congress just tells them, gives them middle finger to this, and it's like, how many people can you can get? And they get only 5 to 10, and he stays speaker. It really diminishes their ability to get anything done. Don't call bluffs. If you suffer defeats, you're not looking hardcore or not really holding them to account. You instead just look like you got owned. You suffer a defeat. And that loss damages your reputation and ability to get things done. And that's what's really going to happen if Republicans pursue that. And even if they did get a motion to vacate, they're not going to get anyone better than Johnson. They're going to get the exact same scenario. But instead, they're probably going to even hurt their fundraising. They're going to create more of a distraction from what they should be focused on, and that's getting Trump elected. And then they'll end up with the same results. They're not even sending a message, because all it really is sending to moderates that they're more likely to vote with Democrats despite Republicans, and they don't even have to worry about political consequences, because guess what? They're in blue districts. Their constituents aren't going to care about this stuff. They can't mount a serious primary challenge against these guys, and the conservatives have no leverage over them. So you just have to be smart with this stuff and not, or that's more the reputation for House Republicans. And for conservatives who are watching this, I just think Congress has been doing this idiotic stuff for years and years and years. The difference is you wouldn't have a majority of Republicans vote against this stuff. Now they are. So you're slowly progressing. Not obviously as fast as we want, but it's more than what we would have had 5-10 years ago. And so you are having those positive developments that shows the Republicans are moving in an America First direction. You just need the proper leadership, the proper direction, and right now we lack that because Trump's not in the White House. Everyone wants to go in their own direction, and you can't unify people. But even in that case, you still get 112 Republicans vote against aid for Ukraine. You get over 20 Republicans voting for aid towards Israel, which is just, even though with the small amount of number, it's a remarkable how it is. The only other factor I want to say is how every single Democrat voted for aid to Ukraine, which they supposedly have like AOC and all these people who are like, oh, we are foreign policy, we want to bring peace to the world. Yet they all vote for Ukraine. They all voted for Taiwan, and only like 30 voted against the TikTok ban. And yet only 34 voted against Israel, which you're supposedly hearing, and their whole base is pretty much anti-Israel at this point, or it's getting there, and that only 34 Democrats vote against the aid. Like if you were a Democrat and you cared about this foreign policy stuff, you cared about non-interventionism, you would have way more reason to be blackpilled. Because guess what? Your whole caucus, and they're in that position is represented not on Ukraine, but on Israel, it's represented in there, which is just bizarre. It's like, they're pro-Ukraine and supposedly, critical of Israel, but, or their bases, but yet they're fully for the empire when it comes to voting. Their lawmakers are. And I think the Ukraine stuff has nothing to do with actual commitment to the empire, this is for the progressive, like left-wing ones, like Pramila Jayapal and AOC and Ilhan Omar and that stuff. The main reason they're voting against Ukraine because they view it as a right-coded issue, and their main thing is owning the right. I mean, a lot of the main thing for conservatives is owning libs, but for libs, it's even with that, the foreign policy measure, they're solely supportive of Ukraine because, one, their base no longer cares about it. Their base has just moved on to Israel, caring about that. And a lot of their Democrat base that they have to appeal to, the resistance types, MSNBC watchers, MSNBC and CNN, a lot of the mainstream media will be pretty critical of the Israeli war. But when it comes to Ukraine, it's like Russia is totally justified, or is totally the greatest evil in the world. And Russia is committing a genocide. One of the funny things is this is a little bit of a side issue, but mainstream media, NPR and stuff will say, oh, Russia is 100% committing a genocide in Ukraine. It's like, no, they're not. And then you'll see that Israel is actually actively committing ethnic cleansing in Gaza. It's like, this is not genocide. You'll see the same people say Russia's committing a genocide in Ukraine when they're 100% not. It's just a standard war. It's like, yeah, people have to leave their homes after they're bombed and shelled. That just happens. And they want to keep those Ukrainians within Russia. They just want to Russify. Well, a lot of them are already Russified, but that's another matter. There's no genocide happening in Ukraine, but they're like, well, they don't want to speak the Ukrainian language. And it's like, well, those people already don't speak the Ukrainian language. What genocide is happening? Well, here in Gaza, Israel is intentionally trying to ethnically cleanse the land. And they're like, well, this is just not genocide. It's very funny what happens when the national security state has interests, conflicting interests in these areas, and what stance you decide to take. But that aside, with Ukraine, liberals vote for it as a way to own the right, and they don't want to oppose measures because they don't want to be seen as on the same side as MTG and Matt Gaetz and those types. And this deflates all this thing, oh, far left, far right coming together. It's like, no, the far left primarily hates the far right more than anything else. They don't want to come together with us on anything. And also, even when there's an issue that their whole base is pretty insistent on, such as aid for Israel, and this may cost them Michigan and some other areas in the country 2024, because this is like the #1 issue for Muslim Americans, they're still going to vote for the national security state. Very weak party. Well, it's a lot because of party discipline. I mean, there's a lot more party discipline within the Democrats, which makes them a lot more effective in Congress, but it also makes them more willing to sell out their base. So it comes with pros and cons. So if you ever want to be, that's maybe another thing to lighten the black pill load, is just look at Democrats. And imagine if you're like a Bernie bro or, a type of Chapo guy, and you're looking at that vote total, you'd be way more black pill than Republicans. As a lot of these positions, like when it comes to Ukraine and Israel, the base just either doesn't care or they're overwhelmingly supportive. Yet you're still having a large number of Republicans turn against the old GOP consensus. Meanwhile, Democrats, as they're all just care about party loyalty, they go along with the party no matter what. Makes them more willing to pass bills and stuff, but at the same time, they're more willing to sell out their own base. So that is my discussion on that. Some of this stuff is actually repeating, but Hakeem Jeffries' speakership would be a nightmare, but I think it's less likely to happen because Democrats are going to stand up for Johnson. It would be a really massive own or betrayal of Johnson if they don't, which whatever, it'd be the only reason they would do that if they're convinced that they could get Hakeem Jeffries as a speaker. It would be really dirty politics, but I think even Democrats just want to move along. They just want to keep the House as is, and maybe they might think that Jeffries is that. If they don't vote to support Johnson in a motion to vacate, that's really bad, because that shows the Democrats are convinced that they can get Hakeem Jeffries a speaker. The only reason they won't is that they think that Hakeem Jeffries will never be speaker, is that there's low chances of that, and that's why they'll keep Johnson. So there's a successful motion to vacate. There's a lot to worry about there. But we'll see. We'll keep an eye on this and what happens. And I think even Republicans, MTG and others are chastened by this, and they don't want to go full on into the motion to vacate anyway. So we'll see. We'll be covering this probably next week as well, or talking about it as next week as well. But we'll now go on to the COD Fleet questions. We've got a lot today, even though we're going to be saving a lot for the mailbag. As a reminder, you too can get the power to ask me questions or suggest guests and topics if you sign up for the COD Elite option at Highly Respected Substack, and that's at highly-respected.com. And make sure to sign up for the IQ supplements while you're there. So the first question comes from Dollar Bill. He sent in 2 questions. His other question will be for the mailbag. He said, I saw your tweet responding to Ashley St. Clair demanding Republicans purge red pill men. This is part of a recent trend I've noticed where these women on Twitter who call themselves conservative or trad are lashing out at right-wing men for being mean to women. Women are herd animals, and it's like a software update went out for them to start doing this. What do you think is going on with this? I'm ambivalent about women voting. In Canada, women helped elect Justin Trudeau because they thought he was handsome. On the other hand, white women in 2016 ultimately pulled Trump over the finish line. Also, in terms of practicality, repealing the 19th Amendment is about as realistic as electing a Habsburg to be king of America. That is true. There's a couple things to work with. One, all these women are extremely online and are upset that men are being mean to them. And that's just the nature of the space. Like, the space is predominantly male. The space is also, a lot of these men have a lot of grievances, and for some more justified than others. A lot of these guys generally aren't women respecters. And this is like, even goes back to Gamergate. I mean, there's a little bit overstating the importance of Gamergate, but Gamergate was driven by the fact that this was a male-only space that was being invaded by women, and women were then messing up the space and trying to make it in their way to be more friendly. And generally what these women were upset about was that there was a woman who was sleeping around to getting good game reviews, and these guys then got upset about it. And then we came about ethics in video game journalism and how that worked out. Now, Gamergate itself wasn't that important, but a lot of the culture around it then seeped into right-wing culture, and that became part of the alt-right. And even though that group of people have probably aged out of this, and we have a whole new group of men who are involved in this stuff, it's a similar mentality. And with right-wing politics, as you could have seen from the demographics of highly respected listeners, that it's 99.7% male, 0.3% women. You know, it's overwhelmingly male with this. And what these women are basically saying is, you know, whatever, you know, there's probably some guys saying mean stuff to them. But that's just the nature of the internet. And a lot of these women signed up for this knowing this. Because some of these women, I don't want to mention any specific names, but a lot of these women get into this stuff because it's a way for them to get a lot of male attention, because there's so few women that if you're just a woman involved in this, you're going to get a ton of men into you and giving you a ton of attention. So there's something a little strange about the women involved in this. And some are fine, some are not so fine, but that's another matter. And so these women kind of are aware of what they've signed up for. You know, you're going to be dealing with a lot of insane stuff in your timeline. Now, does this affect voters? No, because most American women are not logging on to right-wing Twitter to content farm. Okay? That's not most American women. Okay? They're out, you know, on TikTok and focused on shopping, whatever. You know, they're not even paying attention to this stuff. Now, there's a vague awareness of Andrew Tate and other things and red pill men, but the thing is, none of these red pill male influencers have any real connection, direct connection to Republican politics or conservatives. None of them are getting published by National Review. None of them are getting, you know, highlighted on Fox News. The most they have is that Tucker Carlson, who is not on Fox News anymore, interviews Andrew Tate. That's it. That's pretty much the only connection you can draw to Republicans. There is not a Congressman Andrew Tate. So what do you mean that they need to purge red pill men? That means we need greater internet censorship, which all these, and they're basically, and a lot of these women, they know they have a close connection to Elon, and they're essentially saying, Elon, you need to ban these men who are saying, once you hit 30, you're a roasty. That's not what conservatives are about. You know, that's not what the right's supposed to be about. We're both supposed to be about free speech, not protecting the feelings of a handful of women, and then ensuring that inflating their egos becomes the most important thing. And they're using this argument as a way to just shut down discourse, because I've noticed this with a lot of women. They're like, well, I'm a woman. I need to be appreciated on this sphere. It's like, you know, maybe guys should be nicer to them. But it's the nature of the internet. It's the nature of right wing. It's the nature of politics Twitter. It's like everyone's mean to each other. Everyone's an asshole. It's just what it happens. And especially to these women, it comes along. Now they get a lot of hate more than men, but it's like, what do you want? You want, censorship. That's not where we're supposed to be at. And it's not going to have any effect on women. Because most women, as I said, are not logging onto Twitter to content farm. They are out doing other things. There is no direct connection between the red pill stuff. They have an awareness of Andrew Tate, but they're not blaming Republicans. You know what they're blaming Republicans for? For abortion and birth control. And also Ashley St. Clair herself. One of the funny things, she had a viral thread that obviously Elon, boosts because he boosts everything that she posts, and about how birth control is bad and maybe we should ban it. And then Charlie Kirk said, hey, we should maybe ban it. And she's like, actually, no, we shouldn't. And I was like, wait a minute. The whole logical gist from your tweet thread or your, week-long tweets about birth control would have been maybe we should ban it or look at restricting it. And then when somebody makes a logical conclusion from your thread, you then get upset and say this is bad for women. But all these women, a lot of these right-wing women, especially more to the mainstream conservative side, are focused on the issues that is actually hurting us with ordinary women voters. And it's talking about banning IVF, banning birth control, really pushing that they have a full-on ban on abortion, which that could be your beliefs, but that's really what's hurting Republicans more with ordinary women voters than Andrew Tate or 50 follower incel Sturmfuhrer is 69 is saying to you, posting an empty egg carton to you. And essentially what they want is that if you post an empty egg carton to a female influencer, you get banned or even arrested. And that actually points to the thing whenever people bring up Bukele and we need to have mass arrests. If they ever did it to a group, it would be towards incels in America, because that is a group that both the right and the left hate. Even though incels may make up a large percentage of both the far left and far right, even though the far left is absolutely hateful towards incels, while the far right has a joking relationship with them. That would be the one group that everyone agreed to, because every American woman wants these men put away in jail and to suffer, because the type of hatred that women have for low status men cannot be comprehended. It's like the type of hate that you may see from Arabs towards Israelis does not even compare to the hate American women have for low status men and low status incels. And they really do want them in concentration camps. And that's what's driving a lot of this stuff, because a lot of these women, they are in a sphere that attracts a large number of incels. Some of them were aware of what they were getting into when they signed up for this, and now they're just upset about it. But yeah, what happens with women, the women are, long before Andrew Tate became a thing, Republicans were losing among college-educated white women. There's larger social changes that are happening among them. They're single, they're not getting married. Once they get married and have kids, they're more inclined to be Republican, vote Republican, be conservative. But guess what? A lot of them aren't doing that. They're staying single. And guess who promises them more benefits and takes care of them when they're a single adult female living in a city? Democrats. Democrats promise them the ideal lifestyle. If you vote Democrats, you're going to have birth control. You're going to have abortion. You're going to have workplace rules that benefits you and make sure that guys that hit on you get fired, and you get elevated to promotion because we have these new diversity quotas that women need to be a certain percentage of management. And we're going to ensure that you get more benefits so you can go on your vacations to the Caribbean and whatever. That's Democrats promise them a whole package for them that they're going to vote on to sign up for. Republicans don't really have a package for young women. It's not, we don't really have quite a voting pitch for them. We could say it's like protect them from crime, but women are so brainwashed by the media that they'll be like, oh, well, they're just suffering from poverty. But women get more upset about low status white incels asking them out at work than they do about a homeless guy coming up and punching them in the face. I mean, let's face it. And now I'm not also supporting that. Like Tim Pool was like laughing about it. That's like, no. That's not something it's still bad. But all these women, because there's that trend on TikTok, they're like, oh, I got punched in the face too. None of these women are going to vote for tough on crime policies. And even the women who made it viral is like, I just want to say, I'm sorry for my white privilege. I don't think this is a trend. I was just focusing on my personal thing. And I don't want to try to make this a crime or political thing. All these women who are having crime problems in their own area don't even support tough on crime measures. It's only like the married women out in suburbs who don't really even have to deal with crime in the same way that the yuppie women in the cities do. So it's hard to come up with a plan for them. I mean, really, you just have to hope that more women get married and have kids and start families, and then they vote Republican. And that's really it. I don't know how you're going to win over. The real thing is to ensure that those college-educated single women are not going out to vote. Because a lot of them are apathetic, they're apolitical, they're just focused on, partying it up and going on vacation. They're just not that. A lot of them aren't as politicized as you would think. And it's a lot thanks to TikTok that they're becoming more apolitical rather than what they would have been in the 2010s. Because in the 2010s, their social media consumption would have been a lot more political. Today, it's not very political. But guess what message they're getting? They're getting stuff about abortion and that evil Republicans are going to take away your lifestyle. And that's why the abortion issue gets them out to vote. You're never going to get those women to vote for Republican until they get married. And the thing you need to get is to take away Democrat issues or to negate and undermine them so those women are turning out to vote. And they're doing a bad job of it. But it has nothing to do with red pill men. As I said in the thing, there's not an elected red pill lawmaker. It's not. All conservative media hates Andrew Tate with the exception of Tucker. And then they all railed on him for doing that. There's no connection to it. When they talk about purging red pill men or that we need to shut all this down, they're demanding more. They're demanding more censorship. They're demanding that Elon and others censor these people, and that's stupid. Obviously, we should be opposed to it. Internet's a mean place. It is what it is. We shouldn't listen to it. But all these women are just obsessed with it. That's all they're tweeting about now. It's like there's a lot of things going on in the world besides frogs getting posting empty egg cartons in your mentions. There's a lot of other things to talk about. I get mean people in my mentions too. You just gotta focus on what's the real issue. But I think it's shows the problems with female commentators that they can't look beyond their own individual circumstances to the bigger picture, and we have to suffer through men suck. It's like, why even be on the right if you're just delivering a same message that feminists are? So that's it for my message. I probably am going to write an article about this. It's just going to be focused on why women are voting Democrat and totally own this claim that's because of Andrew Tate. It's not because of Andrew Tate. But now moving on, we've got... I'll just go to K-Mac. Actually, this is actually bringing up Tate, so we're segueing into a reason to criticize Tate. Scott, Andrew Tate did a tweet with over 26 million views in which he bizarrely attacked white men as weak and not taking 10 wives and producing 6 children per wife on the way to 60. It got people talking as white men not being alphas and just complaining online about being replaced. In your view, this goes counter to what we need. A homelander to stop immigration. A breeding war with Islam or Africa will not cut it, and whites will always prefer a nuclear family with 1 wife and maybe just 2 kids. Did the tweet show you Tate was always just a grift and not an account for dissident right people to follow? Your view of the Tate and Andrew Tate in general? I think Andrew Tate was just doing this rage bait to piss people off and to engage him. He does this times. I'm ambivalent on Andrew Tate. I defended him back in 2022 because I don't think he needs to be censored, and I really didn't like conservative media dunking on him because they were dunking on him for this women respect the reasons, is that actually we need men to hear good men scarcity and to be browbeat by these conservative women, and that's actually the message they need. And it's the reason why they turn to Andrew Tate is because it's a very different message they're getting. And compared to the message that they would get from the mainstream media and other big time social media personalities, it's better. But he's got a lot of problems with it, and I wrote an article about this. I really don't like his crass materialism. I don't like, it's very much I said this is like it's a multiracial cultural model of the old Horatio Alger or entrepreneurial spirit that you have with traditional America, but it was completely without the Anglo-Protestant norms. It's now that you're getting, fuck bitches get money is his thing, which has always been appealing to men, but you've always wanted, like, there's supposed to be something more there. And with Tate, sometimes he'll say there's something more there, but there's not. He's an interesting figure, but sometimes you have to understand that he's just doing stuff to rage bait and to get attention. And this is one of the things. His take was absolutely stupid. There's no reason to take this seriously. It's like he himself has no kids. So it's like, you don't have a wife. So what are you talking about? Like, they need to take 10 wives and produce 6 children per wife. Even Muslims aren't even doing this anymore. They were hardly doing it prior, but they're definitely not doing it now, especially not in Europe. They are having more kids than whites, but whites have something called a nuclear family. We have one wife, you have a set family. It used to be a little bit more than 2-3 kids, but this is our culture. This is our way. You're not going to have white polygamy with, like, that's just not how white society's ever operated. We've always been monogamous, and we've always had, one man, one wife, one man, one woman, and then they have a kind of nuclear family. We've never even been as big on the extended clan as, Arabs and others were. So that's just like, it's just like totally like whites need to totally give up their culture and become Muslims. So it's like, I don't support that whatsoever. But it's just a rage bait tweet. I don't think he was being serious about it. But I think it is obnoxious how he's trying to rage bait people who would have otherwise been amenable to him and are not really the problem. And it's just a way, like, you're getting owned. You're getting replaced by Muslims, and this is awesome. And that is not awesome at all. And I'm not really a fan of Muslims, believe it or not. And I don't want to be replaced by Muslims. And so I thought it's a completely idiotic take that you shouldn't take seriously. And I don't even think Tate takes it seriously. One, nobody's going to be doing that. We're not going to outbreed. We're not in a breeding. If we had a breeding war, we're losing it already, and we would lose it anyway. The point is not to have a breeding war. It's to produce better than they are, and to protect our homelands, and to build a society where we don't need to have as many kids as we needed before. And that's to invest in technology and AI, to where a lot of these jobs that would have been taken by others or foreigners are now taken by robots and machines. And that's really the more solution to this. As unfortunately, we do have a lot of women who refuse to settle down. And if you guys hopefully you guys read my Good Man article, or the article about the Stop Blaming Men for the Marriage Decline, is that, it's these massive social transformations that were happening in the West that is making women not want to settle down, not want to marry. And it's also making men, or high status men, just wait till their 30s to want to settle down. And then it's more likely then they are less inclined to settle down with the 30-something women and want to get a younger woman, but it's harder for them to gain, and it's a cycle. But I went over that in the article, but the Tate tweet was just so stupid. But it shows the problems with him. Like I said, I'm not fully on the anti-Tate bandwagon that all conservatives are. And if you look at the vast majority of conservative commentators, it is extremely anti-Tate, which makes no sense. But for some reason, Andrew Tate's going to lose us the election, even though no Republicans support him. Vast majority of conservative commentators condemn him, but I guess we need anyone who agrees with him arrested of some sort, or at a prison camp. So I don't really understand that. Moving along to questions, we've got one from College Apparatchik, who he wanted to go Hillsdale College Apparatchik, but we'll call him College Apparatchik. He said he's been involved in politics for a while. It's incredibly easy, pays great, influence is way beyond what a conservative can get in DC at the same time frame. Why don't more young right-wingers seek out jobs in state government? Do they not just know about it? Or is the pull of DC too much? I feel like the average highly respected listener could be writing legislation within a year after starting. Yeah, there's a lot of jobs in state politics. I think it's more that they just don't know about it. You have to be... I remember with Greek life at a lot of these big state schools, you could easily get pulled into it. And I actually had an opportunity to do that when I graduated college, but I chose an internship in DC rather than that. You can definitely have a lot of influence. There's also just not as many jobs with that, because like if I remember looking at staff jobs in the Tennessee state legislature, and most of them just have like one staffer versus the massive amount of staffers on the Hill and other things. And there's not this media apparatus around state capitals, and there's not these conservative think tanks. So there's a lot fewer jobs, but it's, if you know the right people and you're smart and you're competent, you can make a lot of headway into this stuff in the state races. And they do need campaign people and other things. And it is one way to get involved in. I guess the best way to get involved in is within your county GOP. And they're so excited for young people to show up. And then you can get in, ensuring that these candidates have the right views and other things. But I think it's just not as exciting as national politics. And there's just not as many straight up political jobs, because it's a lot of it's like county Republican GOP stuff that you have to get involved in, and it's not as involved as exciting work. It's like who's building the road or stuff like that. But you definitely, there's ways to get involved in. If you make a name for yourself and you're smart and you have a clean record, you can easily make it into the state legislature if you have the right connections. So yeah, I'm always for all this stuff. I support this stuff. But even like state bureaucrat jobs, I think this may be what some of he has. And that's also something that if you're smart, coming from your college with a great resume, and you have maybe the right connections, maybe through your fraternity or through student government, you can absolutely get involved in. So I'm always a fan of getting government jobs, and state government jobs may be a little bit better because, especially if you're in a red state, is that you deal with a lot less liberal bullshit, and you could propose things to make your state bureaucracy better and more right-wing. So 100% down. I do recommend more guys get involved in that. So that is college apparatchik. I think I've got one more question. Everything else is for the mailbag, so this is the last question. This is from Paul. Paul asks, for a long time, many on our side have worried about electoral winter where, due to demographic change, we can no longer win the presidency, especially with Texas and its importance in the Electoral College. Since Texas is now a minority non-Hispanic white, maybe we should examine those fears. So far, the state is still a red state, seemingly because, unlike most of the country, the whites there are Republican by a significantly larger margin than the whites in the rest of the country. Whites make a majority of voters, and a significant minority of Hispanics vote Republican. In the long term, do you think these factors keeping Texas will still be there? Red still be there. I'm talking in terms of decades. If Texas does ultimately turn blue because of demographic change, that would mean that Republicans no longer win the presidency, and probably Senate majorities would mostly be off limits. If that ever happens, how should the right adapt to that? Similarly, many fear that Georgia will go from a purple state to a blue state due to the fact that Atlanta area is becoming such a large percentage of the state's population, making it what some have termed the Illinois of the South. Do you think this will eventually happen or not? One, I think when it comes to elections and demographic change, it's not turning out how a lot of people thought it would have turned out in the early 2010s. We were all like, demographics is going to doom, it's going to happen. But Hispanics are becoming much more Republican than we would expect it, especially in red states like Florida and Texas. And I'm not the keenest on this development, but it is going to keep those states red. And also the whites there are far more Republican. They're more conservative. One of the things is that in America, if you have a higher percentage of blacks, the more higher percentage of blacks you have in your state or area and the awareness of them, the more likely your state is going to be very conservative. I mean, look at Mississippi. It has the highest percentage of blacks, and it's arguably the most conservative state in the country. And Texas also has a high level of diversity. While versus like the whitest states in our union, like Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire, New Hampshire's a little bit more of a battleground, but Maine and Vermont are some of the most liberal states in the country. So one of the, I guess, silver linings of diversity is at least makes whites aware of the problems and votes correctly. But, and I think that's going to be something that will keep some of these states from turning blue. Now, as I said, predicting in decades, it is hard to say what will happen in decades. I will say that Republicans will still be winning elections 20 years from now. We're not going to have one party rule. I think we would have all thought we would have had one party rule coming in 2016 before Trump. And everyone always been predicting that one party rule. And I was very much believing this because there was a lot of these arguments after 2012. It's like, look, it's all doomed. You're never going to get these results. And then in 2014, they had a big win in the midterms. I would have never expected that. And most of the people in the alt-right weren't expecting something like that. In 2016, they won. And in 2020, look at the results in 2020 and 2022. In 2022, it's not so much demographics. There's different demographic trend. Hispanics over time, there's not enough of them voting, but the ones who are voting, it's eventually going to become half and half. Bigger problem is Asian immigration, probably actually Asian immigration all above all, because black voters are going to be increasingly, it'll be like 15% Republican, but it's not due to black Americans or Blacksit. It's due to higher percentage of African immigrants voting, and a lot of them are more middle class and less tied in with the normal black American community. And a lot more of them are willing to vote Republican than others. So that difference won't be much of a, I don't think will be that important. But Hispanics is more important. So it's just going to be a wash. And that's the majority, that's going to be eventually the largest non-white voting bloc. Asians are going to be a problem, though. I think because they're assimilating into white libtard middle class, or the white libtard elite, and they're going to stay left wing. So that's the biggest problem. And also the other big problem is college educated white women who are single, which that's a growing demographic. Or it's just college educated women in general, Asian, white, black, Hispanic, who are staying single and in cities. And that's going to be an increasingly expanding demographic. And that's probably the biggest problem for us, more for politically than the growing Hispanic population. Because Hispanics, even though they're like over 20% of the population now, they're only like 10% of voters. And it's increasingly 60-40. It's going to eventually be 50-50 Republican Democrat. So it's going to be a wash. The bigger problem is the whites, college-educated whites, who are, and younger generations that are more liberal, and Asians as they continue to grow. So those are the things to be mostly worried about. And those are the demographics turning Georgia blue and a lot of other places, and Arizona and other places blue. Georgia also has the addition that a lot of black middle class is also moving there, and they're solidly blue voting demographic. Also, there's like a reverse great migration of blacks returning to the South, and their number one destination is Atlanta area, which is and they're overwhelmingly Democrat. So that's one unique thing that they have. But that's also what makes Texas more likely to go blue, is more this demographic of Asians and shit-lib whites moving there. And, Houston, Austin, Dallas being magnets for these people rather than more the Hispanic population. Because the demographic change is a problem, less so politically than we would have expected, because the electorate is still over 70% white. It's like, I think it was 75% white in 2022. And you got to remember, we're only 57% white, and that's counting MENA, the Middle Eastern North African. So it's not counting MENA, which likely the 2030 census will be. It's a little bit over 55% white. Yet, we're 75% of the electorate. So the main problem we have is still whites. And I don't think that there's ever Hispanics. They're either going to be, if they're marrying into whites, downscale whites who live out in the country, vote Republican, they're going to become Republican themselves. And if they start voting, they're going to increase the number. So it's the main problems with that is the transforming of the character of America and the core population of America, which has cultural effects of what movies are big, what is the type of culture we're enjoying, what kind of music is there, and the qualities and traits of the people, rather than more electorally. It's more of a problem when you walk down the street and you see a bunch of people that do not resemble you and you don't feel like they're your countrymen, but on paper they are. So a lot of those people may still vote Republican. It's the funny issue. So it's more of a character transformation of country. It still has electoral problems, obviously, because it's not an overwhelmingly Republican demographic. They can still help Democrats win. But the main issue that Republicans have, rather than Hispanics, it is this growing Asian, white, college-educated class that's not having families, not staying single much longer, and they're more inclined to vote Democrat. And they're moving to a lot of southern cities because of Sun Belt productivity and thriving economy. And so that's a huge issue that we have. But my prediction is the Republican Party is always going to be around for the next 20 years. Still going to be competing in elections. We'll even if Trump loses this time, we'll have a Republican president. If Trump loses, we're going to probably have a Republican president in 2028. So we're going to have We're going to have another Republican president before this decade is over. I would guarantee you. You can screenshot this. I believe we will. But there's other problems besides electorally that's going to happen with this, and just how we view our history, our heritage, what our cities look like, what our suburbs look like, what is considered the new American, a new American. Those are really some of the questions you need to assess. But when it comes to electorally and politics, Republicans will still be doing well with the new demographics. Now, the main issue maybe is that they changed their tune on some issues, like immigration of some sort. But we'll have to assess that when it gets there. So that's my issue on it. I guess it's a little bit nuanced, to say the least. But Texas will still be red for the rest of the decade. Now, next decade, it's hard to say. The thing is, the Rust Belt may be even more conservative by then because it's all the white left behind. So there's very few of that Asian white elite moving there. And that's what's happening in Ohio. And it's happening in a few other states. I think that you could have a total realignment of that. Georgia and North Carolina go blue, and Arizona, meanwhile, Michigan and Wisconsin become redder or go full red. I mean, that could be something that happens. So we have to see. It's like internal migration of where people are moving to, what states are attracting different demographics. It's just something to see. But also, red states may be getting more electoral college votes because, I mean, Tennessee and Texas and Florida's demographics are shooting up. And I think those states Tennessee's going to be red till the end of time. I mean, if it's blue, this country's it's over. But those states are going to trend red and they're attracting more people there. So they're going to get more of their votes are going to weigh more in the electoral college. So there's a complicated picture that we're going to see. So it's not all. So as I want to conclude with all my talks, it's never over. You just have to address the situation from there. Find what's positive, emphasize that, and move to fight another day. And that's all. That's the most we can do. And I just want people to not be demoralized and black-pilled about what's happening. That we have a lot of serious problems. There's a lot of things you can get black-pilled about. Like looking at the demographics of your nearby school district. There's maybe going to the local mall and seeing the people around. But as long as more people believe this stuff, and more people are, and I want to end on a white pill because this deals with demographics. Young conservatives are more into our ideas and more aware of the problems than they've ever been. I got involved in this stuff when I was in college. And, I went to my first CPAC in 2011. And the young people involved there sucked. They were they were just sucked. Even the libertarian movement. I was aware that a lot of the Ron Paul people were not aware of the real reasons to support Ron Paul, is that they believe the bullshit. Like, oh, he's pro-weed, he's for liberty. And I was made aware of this because, I went there to represent a patriotic student group called Youth for Western Civilization. I was there, and we were handing out flyers, and all these young people who were libertarians, and they're all ugly. They had just a disgusting vibe around them, with just like, this is white nationalists, I don't like this. And immediately at that time, I realized how cringe. And then when I started working in conservative movement in 2013, I realized how terrible all these people are. They didn't get any of these issues. They were Reddit, before Reddit even became like a huge thing. They just sucked. And all these people sucked. And I think that's also a reason why I just went more alt-right, is because I was like, these guys, there's no hope in conservative Inc. Now when I meet young people, and when I see all the young people who are involved in like young Republicans, college Republicans, Federalist Society, there are way more people who are interested in this stuff. They're not fully on board, but they're engaging with these ideas, which in the past they would have been like, I would never dare engage with these ideas. Now they have to engage with them, and a lot of these people fully believe in them. And so we are waking up more people every day than we were at any time in recent memory. And so with all these problems we have, and with the betrayals in Congress and how corrupt the swamp is and all these demographic change, you have to keep white-pilled. You have to stay optimistic about the future, because if we become fully demoralized, then everyone's just going to sit around and just blow all their disposable income on FanDuel and DraftKings, and that's it. It's over. If you give up, they win. As long as you don't give up, there's still a chance for us to win. And that's just the hope that I have, is that we just have to keep fighting for another day and looking at the positives and seeing what issues we can address and move on to the future. And so the one white pill I want to deliver to you is that young conservatives are more into these ideas than ever before. They're ready to be red-pilled, so to speak, in a way that they wouldn't have been even 5 years ago, much less 10 years ago. So I just keep that in mind. And when we see all the terrible things we see around the world, remember there's always hope. And the only way that they can take hope away from us is if we hand it over to them, if we're demoralized ourselves. So you got to resist being totally demoralized about things that we happen. You got to be aware of what's happening, and maybe not to be too optimistic and unrealistic, like imagining that the Habsburgs dynasty is about to be restored by 2030 or something like that. But there's a lot of elements of hope and white pills to be found. You just got to look in the right place. So that is it for this podcast today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I think a lot of people probably won't agree with the opening rant, but that's fine. We're going to have more great content coming up this week. As I said, we're going to have a column tomorrow. Probably not going to be on the women issue or why young women are voting Democrat. I think that'll be for Thursday. Wednesday, mailbag. Thursday, column. And then Friday, we will have the IQ supplement. So lots of great content to look out for. So until next time, stay respected.